My name is Patricia Nicholson-Richards. I am a communications professional with over 13 years of experience. So I started at Tobago Channel 5, which is a local media company in Tobago. I was there for about 4 years, and then I left and went to CTV, which is now TTT. I worked at TTT for 4 years as well as a multimedia journalist, and I'll explain what multimedia journalism is all about, because that's the topic for this morning's presentation. After CTV, not after, but actually prior to CTV, I worked as a communications assistant at a multimedia organization, again, a local multimedia organization. Now I operate as a social media marketing coordinator at the Tobago House of Assembly. So that is my background in a nutshell. So I have gained experience in news reporting, news writing for various platforms, communications assistant, I functioned as a communications officer. So anything media and communications, you can count on me. That's my field of study and the field in which I currently work. I don't intend to move from media and communications anytime soon. So that's me in a nutshell. We're talking this morning about multimedia journalism. And that's, as I mentioned before, that's a field where I really just working. That's what I do, multimedia journalism. And so I would like for anyone, whether it be the panda, the fish, the goldfish, anyone to share their view or their opinion or idea as to what multimedia journalism is. So anyone, just raise your hand and try to define what multimedia journalism is. Give me an idea as to what you think multimedia journalism is and talk about different topics. Okay, so multimedia journalism is journalism. So let's define what journalism is first, and then you may have a better understanding of what multimedia journalism entails. What is multimedia journalism? Firstly, let me explain what journalism is. So you see the definition. Journalism is really the collection or preparation of news to different platforms. So journalism really used to be sending news on platforms such as print and electronic media. Print would be newspaper, electronic would be radio and television. And now we have multimedia journalism, which is growing rapidly. Multimedia journalism is the practice of contemporary journalism. So what we knew as just journalism, where we prepared news for television, radio, and newspapers. Now we have multimedia journalism, where we prepare news and distribute that content to 2 or more media formats via the internet, or disseminating news reports via multimedia platforms. So via the internet, and we also have, with the internet, we also have social media. And so multimedia journalists now do news for newspapers, radio, television, the internet, social media. So that is automatically distributed to multiple media platforms. So that's multimedia journalism. Someone told me different platforms, which is correct. Faith Moody, you mentioned the different platforms. Omari also mentioned the different platforms. And Grace said media sites. I would interpret media sites as websites, so news websites. So you can go on the internet, as I mentioned. So multimedia journalism also entails sending or disseminating information via the internet. So when you said media sites, you are also correct. So multimedia journalism is the practice of contemporary journalism that distributes news content either using 2 or more media formats via the internet, or disseminating news report via multimedia platform, right? And so I did multimedia, but when I started at Tobago Channel 5, I was just a reporter, a journalist. And at that time, we did not do social media or internet. We did television. But when I went on to CTV, which is now TTT, there is where I got my experience for 4 years as a multimedia journalism. So we would prepare news, not just for broadcast on television, but for the internet, for TTT's website, and also for TTT's social media platforms, which includes, because they're still here, which includes Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. YouTube to a lesser extent, but we had to repurpose our content for all those platforms. And I did that for 4 years, so I definitely got some experience as a multimedia journalism. Let's talk a little bit about news writing. So before we distribute the information to the various platforms, we have to gather the information. We have to prepare the information before it is distributed. So news writing is really the activity or craft of writing news in preparation for publication. And so if I would like someone to tell me, in terms of news writing, the first step in writing a story. I'm certain that we did essay writing, and we do essay writing. So the first step in gathering or preparing your news story, what is the first thing that you think is necessary in writing your news story?
Finding information on the topic.
All right, right. So finding information, so sourcing information on the specific topic that you are going to write about. Yes? All right, so you gather your information. That's one. The first thing in writing your news story or your publication, you gather your information. Anyone else want to tell me what step number 2 would look like?
Have interviews with certain people.
So you do interviews, so you're leaving it at that. You do your interviews. Anyone else want to tell me the second step?
Interviews with certain people to get information on the topic or whatever thing you're writing on.
That would also come under gathering information. So you research the topic, you go out and you gather information, whether it be via interviews, whether it be what's another means of getting information? Research. So you research the topic, right? So you know the topic, you decide on the topic that you're going to write on. You gather information via research, via interviews. What's next? Interviews could come in the form of on-camera interviews, telephone interviews. So it's not limited to just going out with a microphone, but that is ideal for when you are doing broadcast or television. It's ideal also for social media platforms, for instance, Facebook and YouTube. Video content is always best on those platforms. So yes, in gathering information, you can go out with a microphone and a camera and interview key persons. But let's say you're writing for newspaper, you have your recording. Well, now we use cell phones. So you use your recording app on your cell phone. So that's another way of gathering information from key persons. So you gather your information. What's next?
You find the main idea.
Right. So then you start putting your information together. So you take all the main points. And it's similar to writing an essay, though it's more condensed. The format is quite similar. So you gather information, you take out the main points: who, what, where, when, how, why. You structure your reports. And what do you do with the interviews conducted? Especially, let's say for instance, you're writing for television or you're writing for YouTube or Facebook. What do you do with the interviews that you've conducted? Anyone want to share what do you do with the interviews you've conducted while gathering your information for your news report?
You need to make sure to reference what the other person is saying.
Right. So we in the media world or in the newsroom, we call that songbite. So you find a songbite from the person you interviewed that supports your story or the point that you're making in a particular paragraph or sentence. And you take out a songbite that supports, not repeats, but supports your previous paragraph. So the interviews would come in very handy there. For newspapers, you would definitely have to write out the quotes, not make it too long and drawn out, but look for a quote that supports your point, your previous point, or the previous statement that you the previous paragraph that you wrote, and you include that in your story so that people would understand that you did your research, that you went out and you got the facts, and then now you're bringing it to them. So that's the whole idea of news writing. So for me, as a journalist, and when we come into the newsroom, we would discuss the trending topics, the topics that people want information about, and we would decide who does what. Once I get my topic, I now get to gathering my information. So I would browse through social media to see if it's a topic that people are discussing. I would also go on the internet where information is unending, and I would see what is being said, the facts about the topic that I am going to report on or write on. And then I'm going to think about who could be best to assist me in terms of interviews, in terms of information, who I can interview to get information to support my story. When I come back in from conducting my interviews, so I would set up my interviews, get the interviews done. I come back in, I go back again, I listen to the interviews, I compare it to the information that I would have gotten from researching on the internet and the opinions of the average man on the street, those who are perhaps in the field or based on the topic that I am going to write on. And then I prepare my report. Before, as previously mentioned, my reports would have been prepared just for television at my first job. At TTT, there were multiple platforms in which to share that story. And so we would have to repurpose that information so that it can be compatible to the various platforms. So for television, you would do a story where you would have your interviews. It would be slightly longer than if you are repurposing that information now for Facebook and for Twitter. Now, Twitter only allows for a certain amount of characters. Well, Twitter is now X. I hope that you all know that. Those of you not on Twitter, it's now X, so it's no longer Twitter, but I know that we all know it to be Twitter. So for Twitter, it would be like a shorter version of what you would put on, let's say, for instance, the television, in the newspapers, and on Facebook. So multimedia journalism requires repurposing of the content that you create, or the news report that you create. So in terms of news writing, do you feel we're in 2023 within the internet and Facebook and Instagram, all these social platforms, as opposed to, let's say, about 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, where we just did news for traditional media, television, newspapers, radio? Do you feel now that news writing is more demanding than it was before? If you feel, give me your response and tell me why. Do you feel news writing, considering that before we wrote just for television, newspaper, and radio, and now we have multiple platforms? Do you believe that news writing is more demanding now, demanding of your time and resources now than before? So let me call on Kathleen. Kathleen, you want to share if you think news writing is more demanding now than before?
Of course, for the very reasons that you already stated, that we are competing against a lot of other media platforms, and also we have to ensure that if we are in news writing, that the information is not viable, or we have to prove the veracity of the information, and
Right.
that makes it even more demanding than it was before, because we have a lot of false news as well out there, and those have to be, made out as as false. So I
Yeah.
think that's even more demanding to get accurate news out there.
And what about repurposing the content for various platforms? Do you think that it would take, how do you see that in the whole scheme of the news writing? Do you think that makes it even more demanding?
Yes, of course, because it's a whole different focus now that, you have to repurposing. It takes a lot of efforts in order to make that information compatible with all the different media platforms, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So based on a study done by UNESCO published on March 10th, 2022, now this was after the COVID-19 pandemic, news outlets are struggling, and that's traditional news outlets. They're struggling to get clicks from readers and are being pushed out by the rapid increase of new voices in the online space. Social media writers are now in high demand. Taking this into consideration, do you think that traditional news writers may become extinct and there's now persons are now favoring or businesses or media houses are now favoring social media writers? How do you see, what is your opinion on that? Is anyone willing to share? Just go ahead. You don't have to go ahead.
Take back, please.
Sorry?
You know, what you said.
All right. So based on the study, so if you're seeing the shared screen, right?
Yes.
Right. So based on this study done by UNESCO, news outlets are struggling to get clicks from readers. Now, this study was published after COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's stating that news outlets are struggling to get clicks from readers and are being pushed out by the rapid increase of new voices in the online space. Social media writers are now in high demand. Do you think that traditional writers will become extinct or will no longer be necessary, and there would now be a rise or more demand for social media writers? Do you think there would still be a platform or a space for traditional news writers? Or do you think that would become totally extinct?
Yes, I believe that it will become totally extinct.
Why? You want to share why?
Because there are more people taking up the online news reporting space, and people hardly read the newspaper or listen to the news nowadays.
Right, and that's precisely what the studies say is proving, that the traditional media outlets such as the newspaper, the television, the radio, and also traditional style of writing and just posting to a website is not as in high demand as perhaps content posted on social media. But there are some disadvantages to consuming content on social media. Some of the content you're consuming on social media may not be accurate, may not be verified. So do you think that there is still a need for the traditional media in terms of presenting the facts? Or do you think that something could be done so that the facts could be presented on social media and you could determine that this particular story that I'm reading on Facebook or on Instagram is actually fact-checked? You all can go ahead. Just feel free to chat. No need to raise hands. Just go ahead and say, if you have anything to say, go ahead and share. Considering that some of the content on social media may not be factual, because anybody could post something on Facebook and call it news. We've seen in times prior, especially during the pandemic, a lot of false information was shared on Facebook, and oftentimes the Ministry of Health would have to come back and say, this is fake news. We are presenting you with the facts now. Do you think that we still need the traditional media to verify the content that we see on social media? Because on social media, we tend to get a lot of information that's not factual.
Yes.
That's I think that traditional will not be needed, because social media, you can't really trust that, because sometimes the news will be fake, so you don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
But whereas the newspapers were done traditionally, these news are supposed to be factual, and you could also ask other people in the area and it could be true, unlike online.
Right. So that anybody could get up one day and decide to say, well, we're back in a COVID-19 pandemic, and just post false information, unverified information. Usually when you listen to your news, when you read your newspaper, listen to a news broadcast, you tend to get the interviews, the information supported by interviews from persons in the relevant fields and trusted sources giving you the information as opposed to social media. So that's one of the disadvantages of taking information or news from social media, but it is still in high demand. Information or news via social media is still in high demand in higher demand as opposed to traditional media. So here still there is a demand for news writers because persons don't always trust the news on social media. As previously mentioned, anybody could wake up and decide to post news on social media. We are not able to properly verify that information. So there is still the demand for news writers, though it's not as great as the demand for writers for social media or internet news. All right, but more so, there's still a demand for news writers, not necessarily for publication or traditional media, but more so for the internet and social media. So I'm going to show you a graphic here that I got from UNESCO. They did this study that I spoke about here. And just look at the graphic and tell me what is your interpretation of what you're seeing here. Remember, you can go ahead and share. You don't have to raise your hand. Just go ahead and share with me what your interpretation is of this graphic that we're seeing here.
What I see is that the internet is taking up more of the news sharing.
Yeah.
Of the news sharing part than all the others, because like I see in out of home has the lowest, and the TV magazine it goes down, the newspaper it goes down. The only thing that is rising is the internet.
Right. So there is the demand for news. People are looking more to the internet for news content as opposed to traditional media, which is on the decline. Look at newspapers. You see what's happening with newspapers. So the internet is where people are looking for information. So as multimedia journalists, the content, the story that you create definitely has to be repurposed. So when you're writing a news story, you prepare that story not just for broadcast on television, but for social media and the internet. So let's say, for instance, Instagram. How would you format a news story for Instagram? I'm not sure if you all are on Instagram, and if you do, if you follow local media houses or media houses in general, how do they present their stories on Instagram?
They post videos and pictures with captions.
Right. So graphics, yeah? Do you see more graphic type content on Instagram as opposed to Facebook or perhaps Twitter?
Not really mess. Sometimes when I post, I find that there is post more videos than actual pictures.
Right. So you see more videos. Are the videos very long, like a newscast? Tell us about what you observe about those videos on Instagram.
Well, most of it will be 2 hours. I mean, it will be either 2 minutes or minutes.
Right. So there's so as opposed to a newscast or news broadcast where it's a bit longer, the stories are a bit longer. When you're repurposing content for, let's say, Instagram, it's definitely going to be more a shorter version. And they also encourage more pictures and graphic type content for Instagram in particular. Now, let's say you're repurposing that same information for Twitter, which is now X. How would you put that information on Twitter where there's not as many, you can't post as many words and stuff like that? How would you repurpose that content for Twitter?
You can have like live news.
Anyone else?
Also make sure you have a good title and you summarize the original information.
Right, so you summarize the original information. So what I used to do, because at TTT, I was also, part of my responsibility was to ensure that I update social social media, including Twitter. So I would usually get a short video of whatever let's say it's a crime scene or an accident or something like that. I would take a short video of it, and then I would put a caption that sort of gives you an idea as to what is happening. You definitely cannot post a full news story or a full article or more than a paragraph. I don't think it goes. I don't even think it goes as long as a, so I would usually post a video, a short video, or perhaps a photo, and caption it very concise and to the point, and give an idea as to what is happening. So for Twitter, it's a bit shorter, it's a bit snazzier. You have to get to the point quickly there. You have a little bit more leverage on Facebook, where you can write as long as a caption as you want, as short, but in terms of the attention span of a lot of people on social media, remember the attention spans are not as long anymore. You have multiple platforms on which you would want to browse from time to time. We have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have so many platforms. And so when you go on Facebook, you want to browse, you want to browse, but still get the point. So you make it short, you make it to the point, you ensure that the key points in your caption or in your short video. And so as a multimedia journalist, you have to be flexible and adaptable. So flexible in terms of being able to, and adaptable so you have to be flexible and adaptable in terms of when you go to get your information, you ensure that whatever you're writing, you can repurpose your content for not just for television, newspaper, and radio, but also for the internet and your social media platforms. So you ought to be flexible and adaptable. So it's no longer just going into a newsroom and writing for a newspaper, which, as we see, is no longer in high demand. It's no longer just about broadcasts or television. That's not in high demand anymore. The demand is for the internet and social media. So multimedia journalists now have to be able to take photos. They now have to be able to understand how to repurpose content on the various platforms. Each platform calls for a different style of disseminating the information. So you now have to understand the various platforms and be able to repurpose your content for the various platforms, right? And so some people use animation, embedded tweets. Now we have music in the background of some videos. You can create an interactive graphic so persons can, let's say, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, you saw a lot of graphic being shared. And so that persons it would have made it easier to interpret the information that the ministry was disseminating with regards to the statistics in Trinidad and Tobago. So you as a multimedia journalist, you ought to be able to use interactive graphic content as well. Even deciding on what platform you want to share your information, that's also what a multimedia journalist has to be able to do as well. And so it's no longer just writing for newspaper, television, and for broadcasts, well, newspaper, television, and radio, but we now have to consider other platforms, such as the internet and the various social media platforms, and how we can repurpose that content that we would have previously written for television, radio, and the newspaper, how we can now repurpose that for the various platforms, right? So I'll pause here for any questions. You all have any questions so far, any concerns, anything you want to add, feel free to do so at this time. You don't have to raise your hands, you can go ahead. All right, so Eve Jack, you have any questions? Any questions based on what you've heard so far? Okay, so let me ask a question. Let's say, let me get back to, let's say you were to write a story. Well, there is a short assignment at the end of the session. But let's say you were having a business fair at your school, a career fair at your school. And you have to write a story to tell us about the fair and why it is important for students, not just from your school, but from other schools to participate. What platform would you consider writing that story and sharing it so that other students would be able to see the information?
On Instagram.
So you would choose Instagram. Any other platform? Tell me why would you choose Instagram?
That's because most teenagers these days use it a lot.
Yeah. So you find that a lot of younger people are on Instagram. What about Facebook?
Because I think that is more for people in their 30s, 40s.
Yeah, so I would have conducted a research at the office of where I work now, to be House of Assembly, because I'm social media marketing coordinator. I would have recently conducted a research regarding social platforms and who are the demographics using the various platforms. And you're correct. You will find persons in their 30s, 40s, more people in their 30s, 40s on Facebook as opposed to Instagram, where you find a younger age group. And so you're definitely right in that with that comment. So you would choose Instagram if you had to write your story because there are younger persons there. What about YouTube? Anyone want to share where they would place that content? You have a career fair at your school and you want to tell other students about it. How would you go about doing that? What platforms would you use? How would you share that content, that information?
Miss, we could do like a poster and like put all the events and what will be happening on that.
Yeah, but in the context of a news story, so let's say you have to do it for news, for perhaps, well, I don't want to name any platform. You would tell me what platform you think is best to share that type of story, because your audience is other students from other schools. Where do you think that content would be best received?
On TikTok,
I'm not hearing you clearly. Say that again.
TikTok, miss.
TikTok. Tell us, that's interesting. I like this one. Tell us how you would share that content on TikTok. Right. So news is shared on TikTok, but it's definitely not in the same format as you would receive it on perhaps Facebook or Instagram. How would you creatively, because as multimedia journalists, you also have to be innovative, you have to be creative, still posting the facts, still ensuring that you have the facts, but delivering it in a way that is palatable for the specific platform. How would you do that on TikTok? How would you tell persons about your business fair, the story about your business fair on TikTok?
That's by getting.
Right, so you present the facts. How would you present the facts? All right, so someone shared earlier that for Instagram, they would use more videos and pictures, right? What would you do for TikTok? Would you use pictures? Would you use videos? Would you use a combination of the two? What would you do? If you were challenged to write that story and disseminate it on TikTok? Because there are people doing news on TikTok.
You could use the pictures and the videos. I had this thing you have on TikTok now where you just put audio over it so you could explain at the same time.
Yeah.
So you could try doing that and make it colorful so the younger people could get attracted to it.
Right. So more in terms of the presentation, a little more color as opposed to black and white when if you open a newspaper perhaps, and less wordy. So in terms of when you're writing your story and as a multimedia journalist, you have to consider the most appropriate platforms, right? So, and how do you choose the most appropriate platform? Some things to consider would be what elements you need to include to grab the attention of your audience, right? So that you need to consider what your attention grabbing elements might be. So for instance, you might want persons to understand that after this business fair, you are able to get an intern. Or at this business fair, you can get a chance to win an internship at a leading business in Trinidad and Tobago. And that might be an attention grabbing point And so that is something to consider when you are thinking about what platform, what elements do you need to include to grab and hold, not just grab the attention, but to keep the attention of your audience. You also need to consider what media will be most accurate and accessible for your audience, right? And you also need to consider the length of your story and how much is too much. Now, you don't want to bore your audience. You don't want to have them wondering, okay, let's click to another story. You want to keep their attention. And where there are multiple platforms for persons to get information, especially on social media, there are multiple platforms, you want to ensure that you hold and keep the attention of your audience. How do you go about keeping the attention of your audience? Anyone want to share?
Well, I don't know how exactly you go to that, but I think my first guess would be to keep them entertained.
Right, to keep them entertained. Anyone else want to share how you can go about holding and keeping the attention of your audience?
Show them things to be interested in.
Okay, one more. I'll take one more response. How would you hold and keep the attention of your audience, especially given that there are multiple platforms where persons can go to for information. They don't need to listen to you. How would you make it interesting for them?
That's by sharing couple words that go across the screen or how things that attract them.
Right. So in terms of graphic content, and okay, I understand that. So where I work now as social media marketing manager, we do the Tobago House of Assembly, and I am in the Department of Information. And though it is not a traditional or newsroom per se, we still disseminate information that journalists actually use for their news content. So we want to ensure that what we do at the Department of Information and Tobago House of Assembly as a whole, that the audience gets the facts, that we keep them engaged, and so we grab their attention and we keep them engaged across all platforms where we are. So we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we are on YouTube. And so the content I create for Facebook, I would usually do videos with a nice short caption that would make the reader interested in what I have to share. And then I say, oh, let me click on this video. Now for Facebook, I ensure that my videos are not very long. People no longer have time to sit down and watch a 30-minute video, a 12-minute video. Sometimes when I look at the statistics or the data, 3 minutes, people don't even look for 3 minutes. The longest you might find people really looking at a video is perhaps a minute. So that you have to ensure that whatever you're writing, whatever you're disseminating, that you can disseminate that information. If it's a video, it can be a short and to the point, but still include the facts. That's a challenge within itself. And so for social media, you have to ensure that your especially for videos, that is concise, that is to the point, it's not very long, because then you lose your audience. For Instagram, we tend to do more graphic and, again, short video content. For social media in general, you don't want it too long. And so for Instagram, you would find, if you go on Office of the Chief Secretary's page, you would find that when we disseminate our information, we do it in picture format, or what we call graphic content. And if we're doing videos, we ensure that videos are no longer than 2 minutes, because again, people have so many platforms, people are busy, you have so many things going on in your lives, at home, at school, you don't have time to sit down and watch a half an hour video, 12-minute video. So that we try to ensure that our videos are short, containing all the key information, and that our caption is attention grabbing. Not dishonest, the caption must also be factual. So as a multimedia journalist, all these factors ought to be considered when choosing your platform when you are writing your story. What platforms am I writing for? If I'm writing for Facebook, how do I format my content? If I'm writing for Instagram, do I need to use more graphic content? If I'm writing for Twitter, how can I summarize without losing the gist of the story, without compromising the facts of the story? If I'm writing for TikTok, how do I creatively put news content on TikTok? Do I need to upgrade my skills as a camera person? Do I need a quality phone? Because now journalists are not really using the very expensive cameras or traditional cameras. They're using their phones. Do I need to go with my phone on this assignment? Do I need to... They're no longer using traditional microphones. We have the pin-on mics that are Bluetooth and can be connected to your phone. You know, so all these things ought to be considered now as a multimedia journalist. The length of your story, the specific platform you want to share your story, how do you go about formatting for the various platforms. So being flexible, adaptable, and being able to repurpose your content as a multimedia journalist is key. And it can be tricky, but there are ways, and there are numerous videos and content on the internet advising on how to best format your information for the various platforms, how to go about repurposing content as a multimedia journalist. So, any questions so far?
Yes.
I know some people, I neglected to ask if there's anyone listening this morning with an interest in news writing, journalism, reporting. I neglected to ask that. Is there anyone with that sort of an interest in this group this morning?
Can you repeat that for a second?
I was saying this morning, I did not ask if anyone amongst you all had an interest in, or has an interest in journalism or news reporting or news writing. So I'm asking if there's anyone who has that sort of an interest in this group this morning. There are a myriad of opportunities in journalism, especially now with multimedia journalism emerging. News outlets such as podcasts, and that's also another avenue for news. People do podcasts now. Does anyone listen to podcasts or even have a podcast?
Yes, I listen to them.
So you listen to podcasts. Do you listen to news content on your podcast?
No.
Why? So how do you get your information as to what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago? For instance, the budget was just read. How do you get your information on Instagram? Go ahead.
On Instagram.
On Instagram. Okay, so you prefer Instagram for your news content. You don't look at traditional news anymore, television. You don't read newspapers.
No, miss.
Okay. All right. So any questions? Anyone else? One has anything to say or a contribution to make?
Are you sure enough how to write it up?
Right. So there is an assignment that I have here. So I'm assuming that we've all done essay writing before. So we get the main points, we do the who, what, where, when, how, and why. We write our story. But as mentioned before, when writing for news, it's short, it's to the point, it's factual, and you tend to include quotes or song bites from persons you interview on the particular topic given. So I'm going to give an assignment, which I think should be done within the duration of the presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Mrs. Richards. Correct, Richardson. Yes.
Right. So the assignment is to be done within the duration of the presentation. So let me state what the assignment is. And I gave a hint before. So you are hosting a career fair at your school. Write a story telling us about the fair and why it is important for students of other schools to attend. Be sure to include song bites from key persons on the planning committee and repurpose the content for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I'm gonna say it again. if you all are writing or anything like that, let me repeat. So you are hosting a career fair at your school. Write a story telling us about the career fair and why it is important for students of other schools. So it's not just your students from your school, why it is important for students of other schools to attend. Be sure to include song bites or quotes from key persons on the planning committee and repurpose the content for Facebook and Instagram. So how long is the time given for the assignment, Miss?
All right, so we'll just give them, it's just about, okay, so we can give them 40 minutes, Ms. Jack?
Right.
I think 40 minutes should be, or 30 minutes? 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and seeing that they have to do song bites and so on, would you have them send the entire story after via email?
Yes, they can send this. They can send what they've done via email.
Excuse me, Miss.
Just kind of type it in the chat, please.
Oh,
Yes, I can definitely do that. Let me do that now.
excuse me, please.
Go ahead.
Miss, can you please repeat yourself for the homework, please?
Repeat, sorry.
Repeat you were telling me about it.
Or you can just put it in the chat. Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes. I'm putting it in the chat. Yeah, because I'm not hearing some people clearly. So let me put it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And while this assignment is being done or they're preparing to receive the information, I just want to remind the students of the opportunity that is available to them right after this workshop series. The opportunity is to have a 1-week placement, internship placement. It's a sort of a scholarship that is offered by the committee who would have organized this wonderful event. So I want to encourage the students to participate. I know that before Ms. Richardson would have asked about journalists and those who may be interested in journalism. And I realized that no one indicated that they were interested in journalism. But there is something called citizen journalism. I'm not sure if it was mentioned before I logged in, but quite a number of us are citizen journalists, because once you post any sort of content regarding news on any of the platforms there, you are considered a citizen journalist.
Yeah.
So we're journalists in our own right, and we are preparing as you prepare for your careers out of school. All right, so the information is going to be loaded in the chat, the instructions, so that you will be able to at least start the assignment within the time allotted, 40 minutes,
Yeah.
and then you'll be asked to share. But of course, we look forward to receiving your full story and being able to probably assess and probably post it as well. All right?
Right. So I posted the information. So yeah.
Great, I'm seeing it now. All right, students, you can go right ahead and you can begin preparing the story, the who, what, when, where, and why, and of course, try to get some song bites. And I probably want to explain song bites. I'm not sure if they know what.
Yeah. Well, throughout the session, they discussed that they would go out and do interviews, and I was telling them that when we do for newspapers, when we write for newspapers, we use quotes. For television broadcast, we use sound bites. So instead of just writing out what the person say, we share the audio.
Right. Okay. Great. Lovely. So I missed that. Lovely. So they're all prepared. All right. So go right ahead. And if you have any questions, of course, Ms. Richardson is she's still here, and we're all here. So feel free to unmute your mic and ask any question if you have any challenges. So you can just type your assignment on your computer, on your device.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
All right, so I can go ahead, yes?
Certainly.
All right, so students, just your feedback. Let me know how it went. How did it go? Did you encounter any challenges? Give me your feedback on the assignment. Anyone can go ahead. Omari, you want to tell me how the assignment went for you?
Let's repeat yourself. Mr.
Go ahead, Sid.
SMS?
Yeah, how did the assignment go for you? How give me some feedback.
Well, miss, I wasn't really sure what I was doing, so I tried to do the starting of it. We will submit more later, but I already have the beginning.
Okay. So did you get any challenges in terms of getting information, coming up with an idea as to what you would want to write? I mean, this is not a real story. It's basically make believe, something that you're now making up. But just to get an idea of how to go about writing and then repurposing the content for the various platforms. That's basically what the assignment was intended to do, to get you to start writing and to think about the different platforms you would want to repurpose the content for. So Anya, Mohammed, you want to share how the assignment went for you?
Miss, do you want me to share the screen?
Yes, you can. You can. If you've written on your, if you've typed on your computer, you can share, and so that we can see what you've done so far. All right. So I'm seeing your sourcing a business correctly. I knew it was going to be the most exciting event of the year. We will be excited to have you there. This business correctly provides a unique chance for students to connect with professionals in the side. It's a valuable opportunity to learn about the industry insight that can't be found in textbooks. By attending, students can expand their network and open doors to internships, job opportunities. Right. So the information is really good. Well, in the newsroom setting, you would definitely go out and get some information from, or an interview from perhaps a committee member, just giving more details as to what could be expected at this career fair. And then you take short snippets or song bites of what that committee member would have said, and you include it in your so you have an idea as to what is required in terms of gathering the information, trying to organize it in a particular way, and being able to now think about repurposing that information. If you want to do it in a video format for Facebook, if you want to take some of the information that you have here and put it on a graphic for perhaps, yes, Facebook, you can post graphics on Facebook, though Facebook doesn't really like too much of wordy photos or graphic. You can think about how you would disseminate this information on Instagram and so on. So good start. Very good start. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else has typed up and would like to share their screen?
Me.
Go ahead. I am not sure who said me. Let me know. Tell me the name. Whose screen am I
I think it's
seeing?
Camellia.
Oh, it's Camellia. Okay, so then career fairs are usually something planned for students. I did get to know the career on Monday. This event. Oh, so this basically is telling us about a career fair that you have already been to. Okay, I understand what you did here. You told us about a fair that you've already been to. What I really wanted was for you to tell us about a fair that's coming, that's about to happen at your school, and why other students should be interested. What is it that your career fair is offering that other students should be interested in leaving whatever school it is they're attending to come to your school on that particular day for that career fair? So you told me about a career fair that you attended and how it impacted you, and you're sharing why you think other students should participate in career fairs. But what I really wanted was for you to tell me about an upcoming fair, what is expected, what other students can gain, the value other students can gain from attending that fair, and perhaps interview a committee member on the career fair committee, and they should be able to give more details as to what could be expected from the career fair. So great attempt, but I really wanted you to share with me an upcoming event, right? So you can rework it to include an upcoming event, an upcoming career fair, what is expected, why students should feel the need to attend this career fair. Okay. And of course, you can send the completed assignment to my email. I posted my email address in the chat, so it's there for you to send the completed assignment. I'll take one more in the interest of time. I'll take one more if anyone has typed up and would like to share their screen. Go ahead.
I could share mine.
Yes, go ahead. Faith Moody. Yeah? Yeah, you can go ahead. Welcome to our secondary career fair sponsored by Scotiabank. So you have a sponsor. That's interesting. Career fair, we have different job representatives to help you decide your upcoming future. We have Mr. Vance here giving a tour of all police force members, firefighters, different companies and teams. We have Star, also guest artists, okay, from Shell, Ministry of OK, Ministry of Education. So those are some of the agencies and organizations and businesses that will be at the career fair. This will be free refreshments. Okay, so I wanted it in a news format. So this is good information that you can use to now create a news story. So something to the effect of, Mayaro Secondary School is hosting a career fair sponsored by Scotiabank on well, whatever date you would like to include. This career fair is aimed at ensuring that students have a better understanding of what subjects to choose prior to their CXC examinations or whatever the case is. We saw an interview from head of the Career Fair Planning Committee, Mr. Vance, who shared what this career fair is expected to do for the student, something to that effect. And then you put in a quote or a songbite from Mr. Vance. This career fair is expected to give students insight into the various fields that they could study, something to that effect. And then you continue by saying, Scotiabank has opted to sponsor this career fair because they are seeing this as an opportunity to partner Mayaro Secondary School Fair. And then somebody from Scotiabank now, the manager, could come in and say, well, we see this as an opportunity for us to give back to schools or to students and to help them in shaping their career, something to that effect. But I really wanted a news story. But this is good information that you can now repurpose for a news story that can be shared via social media, via the internet, and so on. So good attempt as well. And thanks for sharing.
Yes,
So,
Ms. Richardson, the students are really giving us good information.
Yes.
Indeed, good content. Very good
Good content. Yes. Yes. And yes, headed in the right direction. And you know, in the newsroom setting, if we were in the newsroom, I would have picked up a camera or made a phone call someone at Scotiabank, go set up an interview, meet them or meet up with them and have the interview done so that we could include some of what they have to say in this story as well. So good attempts at doing the assignment.
At least they have the information. I'm saying definitely, it's just it gets easier once you get the information just in the right format. So definitely encourage them to do that. Just reformat and definitely send it via email to Mrs. Richardson.
Yeah. Sorry, I placed the email in the chat. And so you can send the completed assignment there. And I'm really excited to see what everyone has to share. We've done only 3 here, but I know there are more to come. So I look forward to going through those.
Yes, but should they try to do any sort of recording or anything like that? Or you just want them to send the actual copy?
Yeah, you can send a copy. Yeah, you can send a copy. It doesn't have to include actual recordings, but you can state who you would like to interview and perhaps give an idea as to what they could say or what you could include in a songbite or what they may say that could be used as a quote or a songbite in the story. It doesn't have to be an actual thing, you know, you can make it up, you can create something, but just to be able to see that you understand how to format the story, that's what I am most interested in.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else wants to share or one last one or that.
Yeah, we could do a last one and then we can recap what was discussed. So feel free to share.
Yeah, right. Okay. Right, well, probably you can go on to the recap because I guess lunchtime is approaching and lunch break is approaching. Yeah. All right. We can go ahead.
All right. So just to recap what was discussed. So we spoke about journalism and what it meant prior to the multimedia journalism. So journalism being the activity of gathering, accessing, creating, and presenting news information. We said journalists research, write, proofread, and file news stories, features, and articles. We also talked about multimedia journalism, which is essentially telling your stories across different platforms. Multimedia journalists embrace the tenets of journalism, the traditional tenets, which are objectivity, being accurate. We spoke about being accurate and factual, getting credible sources, and writing a strong story. But they tell their stories. Multimedia journalists tell their stories through a combination of, it could be text, images, videos, and graphics via the various platforms such as the internet and the social media. We also spoke about the fact that news is being accessed more now via the internet and the social media as opposed to traditional media such as television, radio, and newspapers. So it is important for journalists to now be able to adapt to this growing trend and to repurpose their content. So whereas you would have been able to you were required rather to just write for the newspaper, the television, the radio, now you have to repurpose that content to be suitable for the internet and social media. We also touched on journalists right now having to adapt to this new reality of a thirst for information via the internet and social media, and again, being able to repurpose content for those platforms. Of course, it is important rather, as a journalist to ensure that your information is factual, is accurate, it's concise, clearly written or typed, and well delivered via their respective platforms. So much has changed since COVID-19. We touched on that a little. Much has changed since the COVID-19 pandemic with regards to the demand for news. So more people are gravitating to the internet and social media for information as opposed to mainstream media. And as writers, it is important to be able to adapt to the ever-changing news or information and even technology environment. So journalists in multimedia journalists in essence ought to be flexible and adaptable and always ensure that they're up to date with what's trending, what's happening in the news/multimedia social media world. Yeah, so that's my recap of what was discussed today.